This is Late Night Health, the radio show and video blog that cares about the most important part of your life, your health. Along with Dr. Greg Celaya, I'm Mark Alyn, and on today's episode, we're going to spend some time talking about bone health. Dr. Celaya, thanks for joining us again.
Hey, Mark, it's good to see you. And hey, by the way, happy birthday online here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. A lot of people have been saying that. We've been doing this on July 12th. And yes, sir, Milton Berle and I think some other comedians, because I am, of course, very funny, we share a birthday.
Well, hopefully you don't share the same year.
No, we don't. They're a little ahead of me. Though I did interview Milton Berle once. That's for another show. We're going to talk about bone health, especially I would think people 50 plus need to take into consideration bone health because they need to be careful of falls in particular. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, you hit right on the magic number. 55% of people 50 years or older have low bone density or osteoporosis.
And that's both men and women?
A combination.
Wow.
But of course, you know, the female is more of a preponderance of that type of problem due to hormonal dysregulation.
Gotcha. But I understand that men are catching up.
Well, absolutely. Sure.
And part of that, I think, would be because men, we don't tend to go for tests. We don't go to the doctors. We don't feel good. We suck it up, so to speak.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. And, you know, you and I are both in there.
We are, absolutely.
We're part of that scenario.
It's funny because yesterday, speaking of bones, I was in your office. You gave me some advice. I haven't done it yet. Perfect example. Okay. Let's talk about a couple of things with bone health. Exercise would be first on my list. It used to be thought if you had arthritis that you shouldn't exercise. Now they're saying, yeah, and you should use weights. Is exercise a part of that?
Absolutely. Movement is king. Weight-bearing exercise is huge for bone loss. There's something called Wolff's Law, and what that basically states is that you're going to deposit bone where you need it. So if you don't use it, it's like, for example, you see the guys go into space, right?
Right.
When you're looking at them, they're always exercising, and they're doing so because they don't have the gravity there to help them maintain their bone density or even their muscle density as well.
And at the same time, you would think that without the laws of gravity pulling them down, their bodies would not atrophy. But apparently they do.
Well, they atrophy because they're not being used. So your body, if it doesn't use it, it starts not allocating resources there.
So it's use it or lose it.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Right. Maybe we can talk about sex sometime too.
Probably not. Probably not.
No? Okay. Well, but it's still part of health. Anyway.
Yeah.
Bone health. Exercise is key. What would be the kinds of exercise somebody should do to maintain their proper blood health?
Well, bone health, I mean, anything weight bearing is part of it. And that's a big issue because so many people don't want to exercise, but there are so many other things that you can do for bone health. And we might have a long show here today, so we'll see. I'll keep going.
Got it. What about supplementation? I know that, getting enough calcium used to be the key. Or so we thought, but the kind of calcium wasn't bioavailable. The body just chunked it out. It couldn't absorb it and send it to the bones and other places where it's needed.
Yeah, and everybody, it's all about calcium in everybody's mind. And there's way more than just calcium. You've got magnesium, you've got boron, you've got potassium, you've got zinc, you've got copper, you've got manganese, and even some are saying strontium. But people aren't necessarily looking at it, and they're trying to simplify this, and it's not that simple. So as far as supplements are concerned, I use a certain type of a supplement that has, it's called a hydroxyapatite type of calcium. And what we've seen with this one certain brand is that we've seen fractures dramatically heal so much faster in younger individuals with this supplement versus no or any other type of calcium supplement. Now,
you just take a pill or two a day? Is that what it is?
Well, there's more to it than just that. But I deal with a lot of athletes, and with athletics comes fractures. But there's certain things that you have to make sure that you do as well. But so the minerals are extremely important.
What about other kinds of supplementation? What else? I mean, just the calcium, the boron, the phosphorus, all those that you mentioned. Where do we get those from? Our food?
Well, we can get them from food, but we can also get them from supplements. I mean, another thing that's important is your collagen intake. So if your food is suffering, we're going to have problems because collagen is the connective tissue that's strong in bones, and we have to make sure that we have it. In addition to, you have to have vitamin C because it's needed to help make that collagen.
Don't we make our own vitamin C? No, that's vitamin D. We make vitamin D. We don't make vitamin C, do we?
Well, we'll be talking about vitamin D, and vitamin C is important to consume. You remember way back when you heard of scurvy, right? Or they?
Oh, sure. Limeys.
They call them limeys, right? Because they weren't getting enough vitamin C, and therefore they were ending up having connective tissue issues and therefore bone issues.
Gotcha. Is vitamin D important for bone health?
Vitamin D is huge. It's a big issue as far as bone health. And in addition to that, you have the vitamin Ks that go along with the D. And most of these Ds you don't see with vitamin K. But it's extremely important to have vitamin K with your D to make sure to keep it in suspension. But it goes more on. Let's just say you have a digestive issue, right? Let's say you have GERD or bloating or constipation or diarrhea or cramps. You know that you have a digestive issue and you're not necessarily absorbing the nutrients because you're not digesting them as well. So, I mean, just even that stuff can make a big difference.
Interesting. What else can we do to keep our bones healthy and fracture-free?
Well, you have food allergies, and especially gluten can become a big problem for a lot of people. You have refined sugars and starches, which increase insulin and also osteoporosis. We talked about your vitamin D, but also your adrenal issues, your stress levels. If we're dealing with a problem with stress, we're going to have increased cortisol. We're going to have increased osteoporosis.
Interesting. Osteoporosis is rampant among those who are, 55 plus?
Well, we go back to diet. But here again, there's so many different things. So, for example, too much protein can cause osteoporosis by leaching out calcium.
Oh, interesting. Well, how do you get a good balance? I mean, you want to eat protein, you want to eat some carbs, you want to eat good carbs, you don't want to eat just sugar. How do you balance that out?
Well, that's the big secret. I mean, that's what I work with a lot of patients about. It's like, for example, you have people eating a lot of the wrong veggies, which contain oxalates, and oxalates help bind calcium out of your system, so to speak, or out of the food you're consuming, and it can cause problems with other things. So, for example, you've got starfruit, black pepper, parsley, poppy seeds, amaranth, spinach, chard, beets, cocoa, chocolate mark, sorry, and a lot of nuts as well.
Are not good for you.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you live off of these products, you may have a calcium problem.
I see.
So it goes back to everything I've said in the past, is everything has to be in moderation. And the problem is we don't have moderation, right? People eat the same thing over and over again. Spinach salad is wonderful, but it's a higher in oxalates. And if you're consuming spinach salad all the time, you may have a problem with calcium.
I love spinach salads. Haven't had one 6 weeks. And we vary. I vary my diet. My wife varies her diet, and we try to mix in a wide variety of things. We're big on tomatoes, both of us, and onions.
Well, and each of those can have their own problem depending upon your problems. But for example, if you look at these oxalates, 80% of stones, right, kidney stones, are
Right.
oxalate based. And what happens is you get the oxalic acid and it binds with calcium and iron and secretes crystals in your urine. And, you know, once somebody's had a kidney stone, they're more prone to get them over and over again. But they definitely can be dietary related.
And I understand they're extraordinarily painful.
Everyone I've ever seen, I've never had one. I hope I don't ever get one. But everyone I've ever seen, yeah, people are just, they're in so much pain and discomfort. It's a terrible thing. And, you know, I've had people walk in my office with kidney stones, active kidney stones being passed. And it's like, you're in the wrong place. You need to be in the emergency room.
Wow. And you want to have the stone, and they catch it. They give you a strainer, right, to catch the stone so they can measure it.
Yeah, I like to see that as well. Sometimes they don't. They just send you on your way. But I want to make sure I understand if a patient has a stone, I want to know what it's made from, because therefore we can work with it better. So, but anything, you know, anyway, we've got caffeine, which can leach calcium as well. So, and you know, you've got coffees, you've got teas, you've got all that stuff that can help increase the caffeine leaching. Remember we talked, I think it was last week or the week before, about the soda and this phosphoric acid, which helps leach calcium out of your bone.
Right.
And then heavy metals, especially lead. And I'm seeing this more and more in people when we're doing testing, higher amounts of lead in their system. And that can create bone issues.
You know, going back to the kidney stones, do you send those out for lab results, for examination?
I usually don't see those patients, but you know, if I have anything to say about it, I want to make sure that that test is done after they pass a stone. Usually, if it's a bad stone, they're hospitalized and they do what they do. If they're passing stones and they have to strain them, yeah, I want to make sure that those tests are done because I want to know what's going on.
I know that one of the things that that they look for, I guess they can tell with those stones not only what the makeup is, but they can break those stones up sometimes with sound waves, sonograms, and things like that.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it happen more and more on younger individuals. So, you know, it's yeah. I mean, some people have a predisposition to have it, and then on top of it, you end up with food issues on top, and you can see where you can have a problem.
Right. We've talked about dairy in the past. Is dairy a cause of kidney stones and not overly bioavailable in terms of bone health?
You know, dairy's got a whole bunch of different issues, and especially the way that they're manufacturing and processing and you know, hormones and GMOs, and it's got a whole bunch of different issues, and it's something that we probably should have a good whole show on just dairy.
Got it. Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, I you know, I know that for the most part, the industry does not use hormones because they're federally prohibited and they're supposed to be tested on a regular basis. However, if you're feeding the cows genetically modified corn, to me, we're getting genetically modified milk. Thank you, Monsanto.
Well, and it's more than just that. So, for example, let's say they feed them genetically modified corn. The problem being is now they're able to use Roundup or glyphosate up to 1 week prior to harvest. And so, are you getting this stuff in your food? You know, the World Health Organization said that glyphosate is a serious, serious issue. But anyway, to get back on track, as far as testing, you know, bone density testing is probably the gold standard, but we have a problem with bone density testing. Oh. It's got a 1 to 3%, and sometimes I've heard even 10%, depending upon your machine, of error every time you have the test.
Oh my!
So let's say you go and you have a test done today, and you have it done in another 2 years, which is usually a recommendation, 2-3 years. There's some research that shows that you're not going to see a difference by 10 years to deal with the bone density machine's margin of error.
Wow. So what's the answer?
Well, the answer is you can't get a good baseline, but bone density testing really isn't a good answer to tell you how much and what you're losing. There is another test called bone reabsorption test. And what it does is it looks at the cross-link stabilizers of the collagen molecule. And you can see how it's cycling. So you can understand a little bit more. And it's usually done as a precursor. It's before you have the problem. You want to see, you want to maintain, and you want to make changes. But bone density testing is something to do as well, because you get a good understanding. There's so many issues, right? 1 to 3% every time you go in, and the machines are different. The radioactive sources may be different. The manufacturers are different, and so we can have problems. The other thing is I like to look at is hormones. I want to understand the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone levels, and also the adrenals, like we talked about. I want to understand cortisol and DHEA.
One of the things that you've mentioned several times now are collagens. I was in a vitamin store the other day, and they had large bottles of organic collagen, predominantly, it said, to help with, anti-aging of the skin, to keep your skin subtle and so that wrinkles will go away.
I don't know. I don't know about going away, but collagen is wonderful, and especially if you have the right form. I deal with a certain kind that's really, really clean. It's got to be done a certain way, otherwise your body's not going to be able to take advantage of it. But collagen is important. Another test.
I'm sorry. Where does collagen come from?
They get it from different sources, and usually it's an organic beef. It really depends upon where you're purchasing it and what their whole objective is.
So it's like the skin of a cow?
I
don't know.
I highly doubt it's that simple. Ooh, sounds like a jet.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's another test that we look at red blood cell levels of essential minerals. We talked about those different minerals.
Right.
Well, if you just look at plasma levels, your body tries to keep those levels pretty standard. So for example, calcium, looking at calcium plasma levels, it's really not good for much because your body has a great store of calcium, and that's bone. And it'll pull out of bone to put in your plasma. So we look inside the red blood cell to help understand those mineral levels. And we can make some nice changes according to what we see with that, and maybe make a huge difference with osteoporosis, depending upon what's going on with that person.
Wow. What other things should we look for in terms of bone health?
Well, it's a big issue, and aging is a big issue, and you have to make sure to have a good, diverse diet. You have to make sure to exercise, and the things that we talked about can make a big difference, right? If you're not healthy, you're not having great absorption. If you have leaky gut or any types of other issues, you may have a problem with bone density. In addition to, then we have medications, which we didn't even hit on. There's so many people putting on steroids, which can decrease bone mass as well.
Wow.
And steroid use for autoimmune disease, and they're not even really treating the causes of autoimmune disease. You've got to get to the root cause and not just treat the symptom or try to slow the immune system down, because you're not treating anything and you're causing all kinds of other side effect issues.
Well, actually, I remember having a bone density test on my feet about 10 years ago. It took 2 minutes and you get the results immediately. It was a scan of my feet. It wasn't and there are, I know, more sophisticated bone scanning apparatus.
Yeah, and it really depends. So for example, they usually do it of the lumbar spine, the pelvis, and perhaps, or most likely, the hip. But I've seen it done in other places, and then they just use a calculation to kind of understand that. But that's a problem, right?
Right.
And a big problem with hip fractures is, I don't know if you've heard this before, but the mortality rate of a hip fracture is about 50%.
Yeah, depending on the age, but it can significantly indicate the beginning of the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually, you end up with clots and other types of issues as a result of. It's a tough one to deal with.
Dr. Celaya, thank you very much for joining us and talking to us today about bone health. If you would like some information, go to drcelaya.com. That's DRCELAYA, DRCELAYA.com. And while you're there, schedule a free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Celaya. It'll be over the internet. It's easy. It's fun because he's a fun guy, and it's free. Again, go to drcelayas.com, drcelayA.com. And while you're at it, visit us at latenighthealth.com, latenighthealth.com. Doctor, again, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Hey, Mark, I got a question for you. So today's
Okay,
your
sure.
birthday. Today's your
Yes.
birthday. What are you going to do for your birthday?
I'm going to be stretching my right arm several times. That's one. And my wife and my son are taking me to dinner. And it's a healthful dinner, actually. It'll be Japanese food in Santa Monica, California. I don't even know where we're going.
Wow. I'm sure if they're taking you there, it's going to be great. So I can't wait to hear about it. And have a great time.
Thank you.
Enjoy your birthday.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.